There are a lot of people with disabilities that have people making their decisions and that's not really necessary for them. If they'd just known what they needed to know when they were younger and been more prepared, everything could have been much different.
A lot of times what we do is we do so much for students that we forget that when school's over, they're going to have to speak for themselves. So students that have experience in doing that are going to be much more successful than students that aren't. A student-directed IEP is where the student is involved in the development of their IEP and as well as being involved in the meeting, the actual meeting itself. Unfortunately, a lot of times I think in education we believe that inviting the student to the meeting is enough, because what happens in most cases is the student comes to the meeting and he or she is there but really doesn't understand what's going on. And for those of us who've been at a lot of IEP meetings, it can be a pretty intimidating meeting, particularly for a student that's coming in and there might be 10, 15 or sometimes more professionals around the table, and everyone's talking about the student, what Beth can do, what Beth can't do, that kind of thing, and we're kind of talking around the student or about the student without really involving that student. So a student-directed IEP is one where the student is involved from the beginning in the development of their IEP and then in the meeting itself. We do have to look at each case individually and have that conversation with the student and that student's family prior to the development of it, so that their input is there. And again, going back to transition, that IEP should facilitate that transition, particularly when we're talking about from 16 on up. The IEP is the transition plan. It's, all right, what is it this student is thinking about doing after high school, and what can we do now to help that student start moving toward those goals?
I have autism. I think differently. My hearing is sensitive, as are my sense of smell and taste. I hear music in my head that interferes with my work. The IEP helps me get through my work. I make a list of classes I would like to take. I write and give a speech of what kind of year I had, good and bad. The activities I participated in, and subjects I would like to take next year. And this year, my sisters helped me make a DVD of the peoples that worked with me this year. I like to draw, I like to sing, tell jokes, I collect action figures. I'm writing a script for my American anime movie, and I like thrill rides. I would like to go to college and learn about animated movie making. It is my right to tell your community what I need and want.
Hi, I'm Tom. Welcome to my IEP meeting.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Tom. What were some things that you worked on this year, Tom?
What I worked on?
Yeah, in school.
Well, I worked on English, some algebra, computer applications.
Okay.
And U.S. history?
U.S. history, like.
Right now he has 20 and a half credits.
The English class.
Okay.
That's the only, of course, then he's got to earn another half credit,
Right.
credit and a half someplace.
The way that I feel that it has helped Tom to participate in his IEP is that he takes ownership of it. He's in there and he hears everything that is being said, but I felt that it was very important that he be in there and he have a say. So before we go into the meetings, we start about 2 or 3 months ahead of time. Tom, what do you want to take next year? And we start in there, I want this, and of course sometimes the list changes. Let's start writing a speech. Tell me about what you've done this year. So we go in and we put that down. And he writes the speech, so when he goes before the art committee, he has all these things on his speech that he has accomplished throughout the year, and things where he thinks his weak areas are. He can say, you know, I didn't like this very much. I didn't do as well in this. So by that, he feels that he is leading this committee.
When you're younger, you're told what you're going to do, when you're going to learn it, how you're going to learn it, and this is it. You don't have any choice in it. With the IEPs and including them in them, it has made a huge difference because the kid has to say so. They take ownership. It's empowering them.
Along with decision making, he has to really be willing to accept the responsibility and the consequences for the choices that he makes, and that's been something that, you know, really focused on the last couple of years, particularly with his behavior, where there's decisions on the classes that he wants to take next year. So if you take this class, the computer arts class, you're not only going to just be working on the computer, you've also got to do some book work that goes with it.
Yes, he said he just didn't understand why he couldn't do what he wanted to do as far as drawing. He said, I don't draw things like that, but he did, and he does, and he can.
There are various ways that students can be involved in the development of their IEP and in the meeting. From just talking with the student prior to the IEP meeting, you know, Beth, your IEP meeting's coming up. Do you know what that is? Let me tell you what that is about. How would you like to be involved? What are some things you could do? Students could develop a poster, pictures that show the things that they're interested in and things that they'd like to work on the next year. Another example is asking the student who they would like to have come to their meeting. And, you know, maybe the student has a friend that is really important to that student and is a real support during the school day. Maybe there's a neighbor that's provided respite care to the family over a number of years. Students could just introduce the people around the table at the meeting. A student who, at first glance, we might think the student's not going to be able to participate are students who have communicative disorders. So a student who might not have verbal communication, we might be stymied at first and think, well, you know, we're going to have to speak for the student. But even this kind of a student, with some pre-planning, can participate in their meeting. One of the examples is a slideshow using some video and some audio clips to share what that student wants to work on and his or her goals for the future.
Hey everybody, welcome to my IEP meeting. Today we are going to plan my classes for next year. My name is DeWitt Van Horn. I go to Normal West High School. Will everybody please introduce themselves?
On the other end, as students begin to have more experience in participating in their IEP meetings, we might actually see a student who really does conduct the meeting. The bottom line is that it is a requirement of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and we want to make sure that we are not just meeting the letter of the law, but looking at the intent behind the law. The whole reason that we have an individual education program is for the individual student. So we not only have the legal requirement, but we have the ethical and the moral requirement to involve them in this process. Once students graduate from high school, there are no more entitlements to services. Students really need to know how to speak up and how to share information with other people who might be able to provide them with supports. So if students learn those kinds of skills while they're in school and have time to practice them from their IEP meetings beginning at age 16 or younger on up, then they're just going to be better and more successful at what they want to do after high school.
I was born obviously with a disability. I was born with scoliosis and one arm completely, and I had one leg much shorter than the other. So by the time I was about 4 years old and I was about to be school-aged, some big decisions were being made with social workers and things like that about where I was going to go to school. I think the transition from high school is where it really fell apart. I don't think I was even aware of the disservice of not having a good transition and people not really being aware to tell me what I needed to know. So that was really disappointing because I didn't find out about a lot of programs that were available to me. Being a case manager, really I get to see a lot of the outcomes that happen when people don't get transitioned well. Had they known about things when they were a little bit younger, they could have been sort of preparing themselves better for what they're going to do after high school is over. Advocating for yourself can simply just be asking questions and asking, hey, so I was wondering, I was thinking about this after high school. Is that, what's out there for me for that? Advocating for yourself can be very simply asking yourself, what do I want and how can I get there? And then using the people around you to help you get there. And sometimes, unfortunately, you're working against parents and you're working against people that are supposed to be there to kind of push. Sometimes they're not pushing as much as they should. So then it's kind of up to you to say, okay, I don't want to just go home after high school. I want to do something. And you have the right to say, what's out there for me? What can I do? What can I be a part of? Advocating for yourself is saying, hey, this is what I can do. Where can I go where I can use what I got and use what I can do to better my life as an adult now? Because now I'm an adult. And now nobody's telling me when to go to lunch and telling me when to go to sleep. And you have to expect greatness from people to get their best. If you expect the best, then they're at least going to try. But if you expect them not to do a whole lot, or expect that they're just going to go home after high school anyway, so let's not really bother with this. Oh, well, they're not going to really be able to count their own money, so let's not really worry about working on those skills. Well, she's not going to live alone anyway, so then that's what you're going to get. And so that's one of the reasons why expectation is huge. And because people expected good things out of me, that was what I thought, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. So, in about 4 years, you're going to be leaving here. What are you going to do? So they start thinking that way, because a lot of times they don't know that they can think that big. They have no idea that they can think that big. And I was very fortunate that when I was very little, they kind of started getting my brain ready to think that big. But not everybody has people in their life doing that. It's really important for you to learn to think big for yourself. What am I going to do? I'm 16 years old. What am I going to do in a couple of years? Where am I going to go? What do I want to do? What am I going to be when I grow up? Knowing to ask those questions and knowing how to say, this is what I'd like to be. How do I get there? Is what I think makes the difference.